Thrilled to welcome you and our incredible leaders to our second annual Ella Triunfa Women in the Workplace panel. If you do not speak Spanish, Ella Triunfa translates to She Triumphs or She Succeeds. The message behind it was developed for Women's History Month, and we sought to assemble a powerful group of women who have used their voices and influence to challenge workplace norms and inspire the next generation of young professionals. This year, we chose to focus on STEM fields because we want to help encourage students of Seton Hall to pursue the sciences. Women make up about 20% of the workforce in science, technology, engineering, and math, according to the American Association of University Women. We can do better, and through platforms like these, we can hear from accomplished leaders and make connections with students. So I would love to thank or would love to express my gratitude and our sincerest pleasure to all the student organizations and departments that co-sponsored this event. They worked with us to develop tonight's agenda and invited their students to participate. So during our event, we encourage everyone on the call to use the chat box feature to answer questions that we'll be sharing. We'll be dropping quick survey questions during the conversation, and there will be some time for a Q&A at the end of the panel. So please ensure that you use your hand raise option if you'd like to ask a question and come off mute. To kick us off, I would love to welcome Emilia, President of Seton Hall University's Women in Business, to introduce our moderator.
Thank you, Anna. Hello and welcome, everyone. Just echoing what Anna said, I want to thank you all for your participation in today's panel and give a particular warm thank you and welcome to our wonderful panelists who have so much to share with us today. Just by way of background, my name is Emilia Jastrzemski. I'm a junior here at Seton Hall. I study social and behavioral sciences, and I'm the president of SHU Women in Business. A little over 2 years ago, I joined Women in Business as a member, really in search of a strong community of supportive women that can serve as role models in my time here at school. And truly, Women in Business has been nothing short of that. Because of the different challenges that women face in the workplace compared to men, it is so essential that young women work on developing the necessary skills to prepare themselves for any profession that they pursue. This means being provided with resources, platforms, trainings, and opportunities for us to develop our best professional selves even before we enter the workforce, all of which is the goal of Women in Business, alongside a strong community supporting it. So it is really through discussion panels and networking events just like these that really pave the way for our future selves. And through the leadership and participation of generations of empowered women, such as the ones that we have here today, we are able to shape our best self and transform the workforce that we live in. So done right, networking lets women identify role models and find mentors and sponsors and expand their business opportunities. And then as we rise in our careers, we can then also pay it forward by helping others coming up behind. So like Anna mentioned, we encourage your participation throughout the session, and we are so thankful to partner with Jolly in providing this event. I would like to now introduce our wonderful moderator of this discussion panel, Dr. Cecilia Morsabadi, who has been with us here at Seton Hall since 1999, teaching organic chemistry to both undergraduate and graduate level students. She holds a PhD from the University of Missouri and a master's and bachelor's of arts from St. Louis University. Her research interests are in synthetic, organic, and carbohydrate chemistry, and the work being done by her research group targets the treatment of epilepsy, cancer, and other central nervous system disorders. I can sit here and list her vast achievements for hours, but without further ado, Dr. Morsabadi, I now hand it over to you to get us started.
Thank you so much, Amelia. It's my great pleasure to be here with this wonderful group of women who are going to talk about their experiences in STEM and to be the moderator for this panel. Before I do that, I'd like to share with you a brief PowerPoint presentation that outlines some of the numbers involved with the disparity that's observed with women and women of color in the sciences. So let me see if I can get this. It's not here anymore. Oh, of course not. Okay, let me try it again. Why is it not showing up? Should have practiced this first. It worked when I practiced. Okay, let me see if I can browse and do it that way. There it is. Okay, hopefully this is going to work. There it is.
We can see
Okay.
it.
All right, good, good. Okay, so what I wanted to do for you today is to, oh, that looks blurry, is to basically outline the situation for women in STEM. If you can see my slides, my PowerPoint slides show up, and of course they're not. All right, I'm going to take these down. We're going to try again because you can't see these, can you?
No, Dr. Masbardi, we can see them fine.
Can you? They're not blurry?
Yes. No, they're
Okay.
not.
They look good.
Okay, good. All right. So first off, the first thing I want to do for you is to kind of outline the situation at Seton Hall. And basically, some of the numbers here. Can I see them too? Oh, brother. Okay, there we go. We have about 5,800 female students at Seton Hall. Among those, about 30% of our students identify as students of color. Okay. Many of these students that I'm going to talk about are students that are in STEM fields. We've had a huge growth in STEM fields, actually even prior to the time of the medical school, but it's been growing over several years' time. And now, in fact, biology is believed to be the largest major on campus. And approximately within our STEM majors, more than 50% of our undergraduate students are women within all of those particular disciplines. So biology, physics, chemistry, and mathematics and computer science. Okay. What about faculty diversity? Well, that's numbers a little lower, unfortunately. And I know this is something the administration is working on. Overall faculty diversity for the entire university is at about 21%. Okay. And among the STEM faculty, as far as women goes, the majority are in the biological sciences, the majority of women. And this actually parallels the national trends. In general, biology has done much better than a lot of the physical sciences and mathematics in terms of recruiting and retaining women as faculty. And so this goes back many, many years, and there's a lot of hypotheses about it, but some of it has to deal with a couple of different things. One says that some of the types of work that were required were not attractive to men. So fields like biology and physical sciences, things like crystallography, were populated by women, okay, who could do this sort of tedious work. Another thing that a lot of women like biology because they like to see what they're doing, okay? They're more hands-on, and less conceptual. And so they prefer the hands-on approach. So I think that's why a lot of women also prefer to go into biology. Okay. Nationally, some numbers. This is for all STEM fields. In 2018, 31.8% of all Bachelor of Science degrees in STEM were awarded to women. Okay. Among those 31.8%, only 17.5% were awarded to women of color. Also in 2018, 35% of all the STEM PhD degrees were awarded to women. Among those, only 2.6% to African Americans, 3.7% to Hispanics. So as you can see, the numbers are quite low for women of color. I didn't include the graphic for Asian women. Asian women are also low. Asian men are higher than Asian women, okay? In terms of disciplines, biology has been closer to 50% women. So they're essentially what we call parity, okay, about 50-50. All right, what about the workforce? The worldwide average is about, we said 28.6, I had a number of 29.3% of the STEM workforce are women. And also in the US, well, that's where the US is comparable to the world workforce. Okay, so we have a similar percentage of women that are over the entire world, the average value. Of those, only 11.5% are women of color. And if we look at some other countries other than the US, we can see that surprisingly, some countries that one would not think would necessarily be doing much better are doing better, including Central Asia, Latin America, Caribbean, Arab states, and Central and Eastern Europe. Places like the Scandinavian countries are particularly known for doing very well, and they also have very good policies for women in place. All right, what about within the top echelons of industry? Okay, the numbers in terms of women as board members, CTO, CIO, are only 17.9%, and that was in 2019. So quite a bit lower than the men. And in terms of pay, if you look at the average STEM salary, it's a nice salary. It's about $95,350, which is pretty good. The average non-STEM salary is about $50,600. And in STEM fields, women are paid 80.7% of the men's annual salary. Okay, just one more really to go here. These are just some of the places I got this information from. Our fact book online, which has a lot of our information about our student body, as well as the faculty, and NSF database. They do this every so often, they update it. And unfortunately, the last numbers, I believe, were from 2018 that are publicly available. But you can go online and you can look up a lot of these things. They have data on everything. You know, how many people start school, how many people finish school, you know, how many people work part-time, why they want to work, if they want to work part-time. So there's a whole wealth of information in these databases. I also got information from this publication. And this was an interesting paper. I haven't talked about it, but it actually was published in 2013. And it talks about a lot of the issues we're going to be talking about tonight. So if you want to read it afterwards, I can send you the link and you can take a look at it. Okay. All right, so here I put my face. They had a guy's face on the slide, so I didn't think that was appropriate since we're talking. So I put my face on this person's body. And if you have any additional questions about anything I said, you can email me. And here's my email at Seton Hall. So with that, I want to go back to the. Can you put us back on the cover slide, somebody? Or do I need to stop presenting, I guess, so I can?
Yeah, you just need to stop presenting, Dr. Masparty.
Okay. There we go. So we'll go back. All right. And with that, I would like to actually just give you a very brief sense of why I went into STEM, what my inspiration was. And then I'd like to throw it to our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about them, and also what their inspirations were for going into science. I was a confused youngin'. I didn't know, I want to say this, I didn't know what I wanted to do really. I took one of those personality assessment tests that they have, and it said, you know, I'd be good either with helping people and also kind of the intellectual and helping people area. And so the two main things that came out of that were either a physician or a college professor. And so when I was an undergrad, I worked like 3 jobs. I was a double major. I was ADHD. I was all over the place. So my GPA was probably only about 3.4, 3.5. Wasn't fantastic. I wasn't going to medical school, but I learned a lot. I worked at a lot of places. I had a lot of good experiences. I worked in a hospital lab. So I went to grad school. As I said, I was a double major, biology and chemistry. So I could have gone either way. But I actually liked chemistry a little bit more. I liked, it was a little more challenging, I guess. So I'm kind of a person that likes to challenge myself. So I went in that direction, but I retain an interest in both areas. So that's sort of my background on how I got into STEM, and what keeps me there is, I don't know, perseverance. I don't know. Many, many times, I think, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have gone to industry. I wish I would have, but, I do enjoy doing research and the independence that comes with an academic life. So that keeps me here. So with that, I'm going to, I guess, one by one introduce our panelists, and I'll first introduce Dean Marie Foley from the College of Nursing and let her tell us a little bit about herself and what sparked her interest in doing what she does.
Thank you, Cecilia. So I'm Marie Foley. I'm the Dean of the College of Nursing here at Seton Hall University. And similar to Cecilia, I wasn't someone who knew, from a young age that I wanted to be a nurse or anything like that. I was always interested in healthcare, but I wasn't sure in what area in particular. So as a freshman in college, I was an undecided major, but I took biology and chemistry and those kinds of things because the same thing, I always had an interest in the sciences. And it was after that I did finally decide. I always had more of an affinity towards anatomy and physiology as opposed to the, other biological sciences. And so that's when I decided to go into nursing. So I have never for a day in my life regretted doing that. I love being a nurse. I love caring for people at the most vulnerable times in their lives. And then because even when I worked in the hospital, I was always someone who was, like mentored the new nurses, even when I had only worked there for a year or whatever. And so I decided to get a master's degree. I did that a year after I graduated from undergraduate school. I went to NYU. And at that time, the master's degrees, you could either do a master's in nursing education or a master's in the delivery of nursing sciences. So naturally I couldn't decide which I wanted to do. So I took all of the courses for both degrees. And when it came into the end, I had to do a practicum. And I said to my advisor, well, can I just do it in both? And she said, no, because you can't double dip. So I had to make a decision, and that's when I decided that education was the criteria or the field that I wanted to do. And so I taught for a few years and then decided that if I wanted to stay in higher ed, I needed a PhD. So again, I went back to NYU and received my PhD in nursing, and my research interests have always been in child temperament and parenting and those types of fields. So thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to switch to one of our one student, okay, Abigail Pierre. Abigail, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you wound up becoming a biochemistry major and what you think you might do with your life?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Abigail. I am a biochemistry junior. I also do research in the Badillo Organic Chemistry Lab. And so, believe it or not, when I first applied to Seton Hall, I was planning on becoming a poli-sci major. My whole life, basically, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I've been gearing up toward that. But then when I was a junior, I had taken an AP chemistry class. Without regular chemistry, I just jumped into the fire. It was wonderful, and I loved it. And then I realized after senior year when I took AP Gov that law and government's not for me. And then I remembered around the same time my friend's mom died from cancer, and my brain was thinking, why is this still a problem? I feel like our technology should be good enough. And that kind of intrigued me. And earlier on in 2013, there's like this soursop craze that went around. I don't know if you knew about it. But basically, soursop has this anti-cancer property, anti-tumor properties from this molecule in it. And I was super intrigued by that. And I just thought, as a poli-sci major, I can't study that molecule. But as a biochemistry major, I can. So that's what brought me into biochemistry. And then I chose biochemistry because I love chemistry a lot, but also like sprinkle a little bit of bio, makes a nice little mixture. And I hope to go into industry and work on cancer drug development. So that's what my goal is to do.
Good deal. All right, thank you so much. Thanks for your perspective. Okay, next we'll go to Heather Munoz. Can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. As a child, I grew up in a house where I was first generation in this country, and everyone in my dad's side of the family came from Mexico, and there was a lot of artists in the family, and I was naturally pretty good at painting and drawing, and it came easy to me. But I found at school the place I enjoyed myself the most is in the math area and dealing with that part of my brain. And I think when I was in high school, I had a counselor tell me that although I was really good at math, I would be exceptional as a teacher in art. And a lot of my family are teachers. And so I initially went to college thinking that that's what I would do. But the more courses I took in areas where I love to spend my brain matter at, the more I realized that probably wasn't the best suited for me, because the people in my art classes were so much better than me. That's where you recognize where people are exceptional in that space. And so I was very much appreciative of the fact that I was around students who were just going to excel in that field. And my junior year, I was introduced to industrial design. And so that kind of blends the whole science and the product development components together. So, and then I met someone who had recently graduated, took a job at IDEO. And IDEO was working with Apple at the time, creating some beautiful designs around computers. And so I thought for sure that's exactly what I wanted to do when I left school. And then I applied for every single company that was in that space, and I just didn't get in. So the first job I got was a mechanical engineer, and I learned a lot in being in that field. Still around three-dimensional design, still around the same constructs, but eventually I moved into a company where I started writing code and doing computer programming. And it's a great blend of being an artist, because there's 1,000 ways you can solve a problem in this space. And the beauty of the elements of what we create are now mobile apps, which is with the space I'm working in today. For many years, I worked in the back-end services of the whole computer science world, but I feel very, very lucky that I'm able to still, right now, enjoy the beauty of some of the things I enjoy about art through the sciences. And I had a lot of good influences when I was very young, and they happened to all be males. But I had great leaders who kind of directed me into things they saw I was good at. So I feel like I kind of evolved in this space just by happenstance. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I had ideas, but I didn't immediately get roles in those things. But it's all been quite a blast doing this for the last 28 years.
Good. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Garcia. I graduated from Seton Hall in 2005 with a bachelor's in chemistry. And I originally got interested in chemistry in high school. I had this amazing high school chemistry teacher. She was probably one of the few female science teachers I've had. And she just had such a passion for science. I just fell in love with chemistry. I think even thinking further back to middle school, I remember just like Heather, I loved math. Even to this day, I love math. And I recall having a male student tell me, you're not supposed to be good at math, you're a girl, right? And I think just that hearing that stereotype of women not being good at science or math really made me want to prove them wrong. And further gave me, I think, the motivation to study science. So after I finished my master's in chemistry, my bachelor's in chemistry, I went on to get a master's in chemistry from UCLA. And then from there, I worked doing R&D, sort of more industrial R&D, and I did not like that. And it was really tough because I had to make a decision to leave that job before I had another job, but it was the best decision of my life. It was very tumultuous, and I was in my early 20s. So I think, since then, looking back, that was probably one of the easiest things I've gone through. So I think whenever you're in a stage, it feels so hard, but it's just to prepare you for future stages. But from there, I was able to enter the pharmaceutical industry. And right now I work for BioNTech doing in the oncology space, and absolutely love what I do, and just love being in science. And one of the things I love about where I am is that there are so many women in leadership positions, scientists. So it does feel so different from, when I was in middle school, 20 plus years ago. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, Dr. Yu.
Hi, everyone. So my story is similar and a little bit different from everyone's. And my story is a little bit sad. And that is, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My family, they're mainly musicians. I think Abigail is also a musician. So, it was piano at 3, violin at the 11, and clarinet, saxophone, and so forth. And I thought, maybe I'll be a musician. How awesome would that be? And my mother very tactfully told me, you will never make money, dear. So think of something else. And, being an immigrant, living in Canada, right? I came to Canada with my parents at a very young age. It was all about, well, what could I do that was safe? And like the other esteemed women on the panel have shared, I thought maybe something applied. Do I go into medicine? Do I apply it maybe to nursing or something, right? That maternal urge kicks in to help people. So yeah, I did science at the University of Toronto. I did a bachelor's in immunology. This was back in the 80s when immunology was really big and exciting. And I have to say, I didn't love it. Kind of like what some of you were saying. It was, unfortunately, I didn't do it because I loved it. I thought it would get me somewhere in my journey, right? It was just like a stepping stone. It was kind of like, oh, once I finish these 4 years, then I'll know what I want to do, right? The big aha moment. Well, of course, that came and went. And so I thought, well, I'll just stick around and do a master's in pathology. Yeah, that's it. I'll do a master's in pathology. Thinking that at the end of that aha moment, it's coming, right? Of course, then after that, it was, what, maybe I'll do a PhD. Maybe I'm heading toward academia. Who knows? So I went off to England and a wonderful university. It was the University of Cambridge, but the specific college I was at, it was Gondolin Keys, where Professor Stephen Hawking was at the time. It was in 1992. They only admitted women in 1979. So you can imagine going from a progressive country like Canada, North America in general, going to this college where, we're still seen as an oddity as women in the college, much less strong women, strong Asian women in science. But I have to say, I grabbed it for everything it was worth. It was exciting being where I was with the people that I was, and it satisfied my intellectual curiosity. Where you have a hypothesis, you go about getting your data and thinking critically about what does this all mean. And I stopped thinking about what's it going to get me, and I just lived in the moment. I loved it. And the 3 years that I spent there, my scholarship was only 3 years, so I finished 1995 October. I was out of there with my degree. I went on to do a postdoc. I went to Berlin. Awesome, loved it. Hated the science, hated the lab, but the city, right? In 1996, after the wall came down, 95, it was awesome. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So I started to see this sort of thing that, it's kind of the journey I need to be enjoying, not always thinking, what's it going to get me? What's it going to get me? And for me, that was the aha moment that sparked my passion for STEM. When I actually joined Amicus, right? I'm skipping a whole bunch of years, but when I joined Amicus, which is a biotech that focuses on rare diseases, right? Because I was at Merck previously. And no offense to those who work at big pharmas, it wasn't for me to be working on another hypertension drug or another, there's so many drugs that help those people. I wanted to really make a difference. And being in the rare disease space, nobody's interested in helping families when it's only, a handful of families. I say handful, right? Instead of the millions of people with high blood pressure, obesity, whatever, we're talking about, hundreds, maybe thousands. That's where I met Enrique Delaunay. I know he's in the audience and he's a Seton Hall grad. So that is where I found my passion. it wasn't so much the courses, but it's like, oh my God, what I can do with it. The discipline of what I learned, the critical thinking. I don't remember much my courses. I do remember loving organic chemistry, synthesizing things and so forth, but taking that, applying it, taking some of the soft skills that I learned about, negotiating, being diplomatic, bringing people together, leading them without them realizing I'm leading them sometimes. It's kind of like being a mom, right? 2008, that's when I found my passion, is when I realized that everything that I'd learned in my bachelor's, my master's, my PhD, my postdoc, 12, 13 years of science, that I could really apply it to helping people. And for me, that moment was the aha. And then it was the journey of what I was doing, not necessarily always going up, but kind of sideways. I did slightly different things. I grabbed those opportunities, and like the other ladies on the panel, found mentors who happened to be male. And at the same time, grabbed people behind me to help them along as well. So unfortunately, that's my sad story. It took me that long to realize, wow, that's what STEM is about, the applicability, how I can actually get jazzed up every day and know that I am making a difference, not only in the lives of the patients that we help, but I know this for a fact because we had an International Women's Day panel, that all the other people in the company do look and say, well, look at that. We have a female chief program officer who has, all these functions responsible for drug development, right? And she looks like us. She's not white, middle American, born and bred here. She's not even born in this country. I'm not even American yet, right? So that excites me too, not just helping the patients, but knowing that I can inspire and help everybody else behind me, regardless of race, gender, where they come from, you name it. So that is my kind of sad, but hopefully happy story about my passion for STEM.
Great. Thank you very much for your insights. I think we sort of combined questions 1 and 2, but I'm going to just kind of follow up with everyone, to just kind of identify some key moments in your trajectory that impacted your path. I mean, I know, Dr. You talked about a couple things, so maybe there's some others you'd like to identify. And I'm going to start with Jamie on this one.
So I think I was just talking to a mentor this morning about this, and I think part of succeeding is being in the right place at the right time. There's certainly a certain amount of luck to that, but I think what you can bring to the table is, to me, there's 2 things: working hard and finding ways of getting noticed. But I think putting in the work is so important. But you also have to learn to advocate for yourself, to work on things that are important, to figure out what is what's important for the company you work for, or for wherever you are in your career. What is important that's going to help you succeed. So I think to your question about can you repeat the question, Dr. Marzabati? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
You, Dr. Mazabardi, but the question was defining moments in your career.
Oh, right. The defining moments in your career. I think I can probably elaborate a little bit more about the time where I quit a job before I had another one readily available, and it was such a great decision. I was working at a place, and initially everything was going well. It was my first job out of grad school. But then things started to go south in ways that my boss was asking me to essentially fabricate data, to fudge the numbers a little bit. And I was not willing to do that. And I was marginalized for that. And it was a really stressful moment in my career. And I remember feeling like, oh, wow, I'm such a failure for leaving a job and not having another job. I was newly married, so I didn't want to just, be home, not working. And so I decided to quit that job. And it was such a great decision because it was even affecting my health. I was not sleeping well, and I was just very anxious about having to be in that work environment. But then I hustled. I scoured through LinkedIn. I saw who I could be connected to, and I was able to to find a job working for 3M in one of their plants that made pharmaceutical products. And that was sort of my entryway into the industry. And I just think, wow, if I had not been courageous to leave, to place myself in a position where I was taking care of myself, of my health, then maybe I wouldn't have found this job that has really allowed me to have such a great career trajectory in the last 10 years. And I'm grateful for that moment. And I think it also helped me in other tough moments in my life, because it made me realize that while the moment is tough, this too shall pass, and that it's okay to be uncertain, to live through unknowns, through ambiguity, that things always have a way of working themselves out. But I think going back to my first point, I think working hard and finding ways of getting yourself noticed, to me, are two very important things, so that when you're in the right place at the right time, that sort of luck sparks, and that's what kind of helps you get to the next step in your career.
Great. All right, thank you. Dr. Yu, I'm going back to you again already.
Yeah, sure.
Any other points you'd want to make? Or
I've got one for you, and that is that the pivotal moment for me really was when I shifted my my mindset. Until 2010, and I'll tell you what exactly it is. I'd always thought that, things don't come to me. I feel like I'm not getting, where I need to. Oh, I can't do that. My boss asked me, well, how about you take this on? I can't do that. I don't know anything about it. And that's when I realized that, the biggest barrier to my career is really me. All that time I thought it was maybe something else, right? And until I kind of sat down, I don't know what it was, like a mental head slap or something, and turned that equation around and said, let's reframe this. It seems to be me. Why am I thinking that I can't do this? Right? And I think in our pre-discussion, I had mentioned that as well. For me, that was this turning moment for me, where I turned around and said, I can do this. I can do this. I don't know these pieces, and you'll have to help me. My mentor, he's now the COO and president of the company. But by golly, I'm going to try doing it. When I actually changed my frame of thought and approach things that way, and not from an arrogant, I know everything, I'm so entitled kind of a perspective, it just opened up the whole world to me. Because then I actually started to have some confidence, knowing, this is what I know, here are the pieces that I don't, but I've got really smart people around me who can help. As soon as I framed that, that's when I feel like my career finally took off, because it wasn't so much about, I'm not getting anywhere because of this and that and so forth. It's open to you if you open your mind to it and you approach it a completely different way. So I have to say that was a huge moment for me, and I'm really sad to say that came to me in my 40s.
okay, good point. Same here. Same thing happened. Yeah, let's see. Who else do we have here? I guess Abby. I mean, you're probably at some of those turning points right now in your career as a student. So, maybe you can talk to us about some of the challenges you have ahead of you and how you're going to make your decisions.
Yeah, there's a couple things. Like I mentioned before, I have a lot of interests, all at which can be like very distracting, because I am a musician.
Mhm.
And when I was younger Abby wanted to be a concert pianist at Carnegie Hall. So like there's a curtain, like I've realized the more I do science, the more I do in the lab, the more I enjoy it. I realize, like, as people who are trying to figure out what your future path is, it'll become more abundantly clear to you as you progress and as you do what you love, which you love more. You'll be drawn more in certain directions. I thought for like a hot minute that I would be able to do a lot of maybe business kind of things too, like with poli-sci and law and policy kind of work. And I actually got an internship in which I did a little bit of lobbying, and I also like canvassed, and I learned that maybe not the best thing for me. So what I would say is, as an undergraduate, be open to different experiences, right? Because that can help you filter out what you like and what you don't like. If you try it now, it'll be a lot easier to figure out where you're going to go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we have two left here. I think Dr. Foley, you're scheduled next.
Okay, thank you. So I think the theme here is somewhat being open to other experiences. And I have to say, I always used to say, aside from my very first position in nursing, I never applied for a job, which isn't really true. But my point being that, because I always loved what I did, I was never focused on one specific thing. So, a lot of times I would, be working and someone would say to me, you're really good at that. Why don't you come and work with us? And so I was like, okay. And so those were, just being open to those kinds of things. But what that gave me was confidence. And so when I applied to the PhD program, basically I applied only to NYU or the University of Pennsylvania. And so I looked at both schools and I looked at what the nursing faculty there, what their research was. And I found that at NYU, there was a nurse Dr. Sandy McClowry, and she was doing work in child temperament. She had an NIH grant. And so when I applied to NYU, in my application, I wrote how the reason I'm coming here is, would like to come here is because I would love to work in that field with Dr. McClowry and so on and so forth. And likewise at Penn, there was another nurse who was doing research in pediatrics. It was a little bit different. Hers was more related to illness. And so I wrote that on my application as well. So when I, had to make a decision of where to go, really my passion was in what she was doing at NYU. She was working in Harlem with very underserved children, and she had this entire program on teaching teachers how to teach children based on the most salient temperament characteristics in the classroom, and parents how to parent their children. So anyway, so I was accepted to NYU, and my biggest thing was, and I wasn't always a real outgoing person, but like I said, I had built confidence in myself. And so I actually sent her an email and said to her, I know you have this grant. I would be very interested in working on your research team and so on and so forth. And she hired me as her research assistant. So that has always, it was at that point when I said, if you want something, instead of just being like, oh yeah, that'll be fun, I'll try that, or maybe I'll do that, which I always, I appreciated, but I felt that if there was something that you were really interested and want to do, just ask for it. And if they say no, they say no, that's okay, and then you move on. But most of the time, people say yes. So
Great. Thank you. And Heather?
Yeah, I'll say that most of my career defining moments have been, I'm in a part of the STEM field where there is predominantly very, very high percentage of men. And also being in financial technology, it tends to have a lot of what you see in movies like Wall Street, lots of big egos and a lot of people who don't really play by normal rules. And that was hard for me to take in because my family, like I said, we're loaded with teachers and artists, and we don't have those kind of conversations. And so there were many times when I was younger where I was offered opportunities, but it was with the idea of somehow contextually taking credit for things I didn't do, or our entire organization kind of exaggerating what the process was and why we were successful. And it defined me as like how I am as an adult. And I walked away from a couple career progression opportunities because I wasn't okay with not telling the truth and in any way, shape, or form exaggerating or lying. And I just realized, maybe that's probably not the best thing for me because I have to live with this decision. And on top of it, I don't remember anything that's a lie. Like, so I've told people for years, don't tell me something that's a surprise party or I'll accidentally say something, because I just don't remember things that are supposed to be, kept secret. And I think there's a lot of times where I look back at it and I'm not at all regretting promotions and opportunities that had occurred with like, a little bit of baggage behind it. But I think when you're in the workplace, there's many, many times where you have to make decisions about your principles and your belief systems. And it's always better, I've learned, to just live with yourself and know that those opportunities will occur anyway. And there's a lot of genuine people out there. It isn't always like that. For a while, I was like, should I go walk away and go back into education, because I thought it was, like my family loves it. Most of them are professors. And I'm like, this is maybe not my field. But it turns out there's a million good people in this field too. I just had a few years of bad seeds. So defining moments, I think, as a general statement, are just stick with your own principles and your belief system.
Wonderful. Thank you. Of course, we're probably running behind time, but we'll do a brief shuttle to a question related to how you've had to possibly pivot this past year in relationship to COVID-19 and with regards to work. And I know some companies are not even back at work yet, but how has that affected all of you in terms of your work life? And this time we'll start with Heather. We talked last time.
I'll say briefly, I think we all work way too much anyway. It only extends it further because there's nothing else to do. So the habit, even when I've taken a week off, is to continue to work anyway. I think that's the thing that's been most crucial in me recognizing in the last year, is that I need to understand having a balance between work and home. It's just too easy to just go back to the computer when I have nothing else going on, because I'm not a big TV watcher on top of it. I think the other thing is I did start at Fidelity just 6 months ago. So I've never met any of my coworkers in person. And so I jokingly say all the time, I'm like, 6 foot tall. I mean, how would they know? Like, it's the human interaction I crave so badly, and I'm so looking forward to everyone getting the vaccine so we can at least somewhat go back to normalcy, where we can, when we choose to have interactions with each other.
Jamie, I know you have a couple small children at home. How have you been handling the situation the past year?
So it has been very interesting. My two boys are 2 years and 4 years old. And so especially when the pandemic first happened, we were all at home all the time. And they didn't understand that we had to work. Even coming to this panel, my son didn't understand why I had to work at night and why I wouldn't be home. So it was kind of this whole ordeal just to be here. But it has been, I would say, really challenging, because certainly in the afternoons, my husband and I can't both be working at the same time. I think if we wanted to leverage TV time or screen time more, probably we could get more work done. But I think what we have decided as a family, what's important to us and to our value system is, to prioritize our kids. And I think this is something I learned, especially from my first job. I recall I was planning my wedding and I took almost no time off. I got married and went right back to work. And thinking back, I don't even remember what I was working on and why it was important, So that really taught me an important lesson, that you need to prioritize your family, because jobs come and go, projects come and go, but your family's there always, your family, your friends. And so I think one thing that I've done, and my husband has done this too, is I have blocked my calendar the entire afternoon. So I'm out of office from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And it doesn't mean I'm not working during those times, but it just helps to, compress my schedule in terms of meeting times. And, at first I thought, oh, wow, this could hurt me. I might not get promoted or be looked at. But that hasn't been the case. I think people respect when you set boundaries for yourself. I think I think that's viewed actually positively. Going back to how COVID-19 has affected us, I mean, it's been, hard like everyone else, but I think it's important that that you set those boundaries and that you learn that early on, because like Heather said, you could work yourself nonstop, especially being home, but setting boundaries is really important, and thinking what's important to you and what's your value system, and really driving to be true to that.
Dr. Yu, have you had any work-life issues either related to COVID-19 or related to your professional career?
Sure, yeah, that blending of work life, it's even harder for sure. I'm actually going to sort of take on what Jamie had said, and as a leader, I have had to change how I lead my teams because it's all virtual. And I've been sensitive to the fact that everybody is suffering exactly like you said, Jamie, trying to figure out how do I take care of my kids, make sure that they're fed, do the schooling with them online and so forth. It's just been really crazy for everybody. I myself have a college-age son who came back home, so he's online. I still need to worry about, feeding him and the husband. But as a leader, I've done exactly what Jamie said. I actually blocked on the calendar for all of the people who report into me 1 hour at lunch that says, please try to take this 1 hour to eat, walk, breathe, and appreciate life. Because if I don't do that for them, they won't do it for themselves. They will just work from 7 in the morning until 8 or 9, 10 at night. Partly because they're worried about how will this be seen if I'm not working. Part of it's just, they're all just so dedicated to the mission. So I actually stepped in and did it for them to tell them it's okay. And I've also told the working families that if you need to not be online during school hours, don't be online. Take care of your kids first and your sanity, and it's perfectly fine. You'll catch up later on when the kids are asleep. I remember those days. And it's a lie when they say you can have it all for working women. It's completely a lie. That you can have it when you're at work and that's what you're focused on, and you can have it when you're at your home and that's what you're focused on, but never can you really be 100% all the time. So that's been my experience as a leader. I've had to be really extra carefully mindful about the needs of the people that report into me and set the example and make sure that they are okay, and send them food and cookies and all sorts of things to let them, little stupid things to let them know that I appreciate them.
Great, thank you. How about you, Dean Foley? Can you make some comments on this topic?
Sure. So like everyone else, I think being at home, and especially in the beginning of the epidemic when everything shut down, meetings just exploded. So, meetings that typically we would have once a week or every other week or, twice a semester, they were every day. And I remember there were times when we were called to meetings at 8 o'clock at night for the university. And we all showed up because, we were told to go and we went. But and then after a while, and currently, Dr. Marzabati, I'm sure you can relate to this. Our faculty are so dedicated that they, like, the administrators, work constantly around the clock. They're exhausted. And so I've done that as well. Individuals, I'll see, like, just take a vacation, take a week, take, a couple of days, but don't get on the computer. And I'm very mindful of when someone is on vacation, even though I know they're probably sitting at home and working on something on their computer. I won't email them. I won't call them. So, so now I have lists of things that I have to remember, or I'll delay my emails so they won't get them until they get back. But, and even myself, there's certain things on the weekends that you have to attend to, but for the most part, I will try to take at least one weekend day and not turn on the computer. And it's very difficult, as all of you have said, but number one, I think I agree with Jamie, especially family comes first. That's always been my mantra throughout my career. And number two, as women especially, we don't tend to take care of ourselves. And, if something happens to us, we're no good to anyone else. So we do have to be mindful of that and try and take care of ourselves. So.
Absolutely. Some great comments. Abby, do you, I mean, as a young person, as a student, I imagine, of course, you're on campus, but how has this impacted you, through the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, one thing I've realized is through online university, it's a lot harder to focus when there's so many distractions.
Mhm.
So definitely you have to be more you need to be more focused and like more you want to have a better like goal oriented when you go to class, like have an idea of exactly what you need to do and what goals you set, because it's very easy to just kind of look, open the computer, go back to sleep. Like, it's very tempting. So that's one difference. So, but there's one good thing is that since we are on our computers, it's a lot easier to like look things up in the event we have a question. So that's one thing I would encourage everyone to, all our other undergrads, to utilize your technology. The fact that we're all online now, mostly utilize it to your advantage. It can really be a beneficial learning tool as well.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So now I'm going to totally switch gears here. And we're going to talk now a little bit about diversity and inclusion in your fields. And have you seen any changes or any evolution in that area, particularly around women in STEM or women of color in STEM? And I'll start with you, Dr. Yu.
Yeah, I would say the most change that I've seen has come in the past year, for obvious reasons. At Amicus, for example, we didn't have a director of DEI, and we do now. I think those changes to me have been quite incremental, at least in the area that I work. Up until the catalyst of last year, having this young woman as our DEI, she's essentially our DEI officer, has been a real eye-opener for all of us, including those of us who are, of color or a different background. It's opened our eyes in terms of just how widespread it is, that even people who say, oh, I love this one. I'm married to an Asian. Of course, I'm not racist or whatever. Dude, you're still a white guy who walks in white guy's shoes every day. You have no idea what we face. So I have to say that the progression that I've seen, yeah, really has not started to happen until those hard conversations started last year. And for us at Amicus, at least, it was having this DEI officer who is an amazing young woman to really open our eyes. And it's really sad to say that in 2020, that at least for me, that's when I really started to see that change.
Have they had any corporate training?
We actually have gone through corporate training, and it was fascinating. It was even for me, some of the my values and what I think and believe were challenged, and I thought, wow, how amazing is this? Right? It's really, it's opened up a lot of eyes and dialogue. And we also kicked off what they call ERGs, employee resource groups, and that has just exploded. We had an LGBTQ one that just came up. I had a young man who said, oh, Julie, would you sponsor one for Asian Americans? I'm like, great. I'm not American, but I'll do the Asian bit for sure. Yeah, it's been amazing, and people have made time for it out of their busy schedules. Eaten into that lunch hour where I told them to take some time off. They're meeting and doing that. It's very organic, authentic, and I love it. It's great. It's been uncomfortable. But that's where change happens, right? We talked about that during our pre-meeting. That's where change really happens, when you are uncomfortable.
Great. Heather, same question to you. Have you seen, I know you're in a predominantly male field, but have you seen any changes at all, or very
I
small?
personally, and I talked to Anna about this just when her and I were talking privately. I've seen a significant change in the last 8 years just from watching the evolution of some of the STEM for Women programs. I have a very good personal friend who is the head of a STEM program in Washington, D.C. And so she's asked me over the last 6 years to be a judge of the ones who get full scholarships to specific colleges and then funding through this STEM program. And what we would see in terms of resumes 8 years ago as this product or this whole program offering was growing in the community is that the younger you get girls involved in coding, involved in science, by the time they're in high school, the quantity of and the level of the skills they've already developed, because they get these internship programs at really good companies who are also a part of this. By the time they're up for it, the first 8 years ago when I was a judge, and 6 years ago when I was a judge, it was like, well, 3 of the 20 who did it were just like no brainer. Mm-hmm. This last year when I did it, I was upset that I had to make a choice. I wanted all 20 to get the full scholarship. Their levels of understanding of science and their passion for it, and the way that they wrote why they were qualified and what they wanted to do with their careers. I was so blown away. I was like reading it to my husband. I'm like, listen to this. Like when I was in high school, I was doing nothing. Like I was working at a grocery store. These kids have had like 3 internships of meaning and value. So I'm just so jealous, because like I would have loved to have been a part of that, right? And I had to pay for my own education, and I was working 3 jobs through it. And I'm like, these kids are so blessed to have these opportunities. So I do think, even though they're baby steps, if we continue to grow programs like that, there's no bounds. If you start with children in communities where their parents just don't have the wherewithal to send their kids to these programs, and you just support them, I just think that's how you make this problem better. Mm-hmm. In a meaningful way, is just helping children at a very young age.
Great. Dean Foley.
So nursing in general has not been a very diverse field. And what we do know is that when individuals and families are cared for by people who look like them, they do much better. And so at Seton Hall, our undergraduate nursing students there's 48% diversity in our undergraduate students, and but our graduate students, they are not. I mean, I think the diversity there, I did this a while ago, I think it's like 25%, which is not great. So we as a college have gone out of our way to make sure that we mentor our diverse students and encourage them to go back to school for graduate degrees and things like that. So there's the number of well, obviously of women, there's plenty of women in nursing, but the one number of nurses with PhDs is less than 8%. Mm-hmm. And of that 8%, it's, a minute number who are women of color. And so, and yet when students see, we have a couple diverse faculty members who teach our undergraduate students, and when they see that and can relate to that and seek out their mentorship, we actually also have we have a sorority, a nursing honor sorority, which was started for nurses of color. And so that's actually an excellent opportunity to try and mentor some of our students. And we also have something called the Population Health Student Ambassadors. And because they do service in underserved communities, many of those undergrads are also very diverse, because they're working, giving back to the communities in which they were raised. And so it's not easy, but it's something that we have to just keep, working at. So.
Great. Abby, in your short experience here on this earth, no, I shouldn't say that. But have you seen changes in your lifetime in terms of your, diversity in general, diversity related to your field? I think Seton Hall, the chemistry class is fairly diverse, I believe. But maybe you can comment on that. Any changes you might have observed.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of diversity at least in like the biochemical area. There's one thing I noticed, that like in the math classes I've taken like upper level calculus, there's not as much as I thought there might be, which is one interesting thing. Though one good thing that I've noticed is that the ACS and WISDEM, we have a couple organizations on campus that help foster a good community of diversity, especially for females. So it would be nice to see a little bit more, especially I've noticed like there's a bunch of organizations in at least the social science area that are like geared toward minorities. Like there's like a minority pre-law program. So I think it'd be nice if we could like start some kind of initiatives for making something like that for like people in STEM, math, engineering, computer science.
I think there is something actually. Dr. Gantar, I believe, started a club. You know Dr. Gantar?
I do know Dr. Gantar.
Okay, I believe she has. So
All right.
it's
Then
very
what we
new,
need
just
to-
past year. So that might be useful.
Yeah, then we should definitely push that club a little more into the foresight so more people
This
can
year's
know
been
about it.
tough for everybody with the pandemic, in terms of
Yeah.
doing things. Jamie, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you last, but do you have any comments to make on changes you've seen since the time, say, when you were a young student, with bright eyes and
Yeah, so I definitely have seen a lot of changes. I echo everything that Julie, Heather, and Dr. Foley said. I think starting kids young is so important because if they don't see people that look like them in those positions, they'll never know that they can achieve that. So I definitely agree with that perspective. But something that Julie said that really stuck out is that over the last year, I've seen such a big change in the workplace. I can tell you that I have never until the past year spoken about race at work, maybe sometimes women's issues, but I think the last year really changed so much in terms of discussions around implicit bias, around diversity, where people are having really honest conversations where we will have an interview panel and people will come up to me and say, and I say come up to me, but I guess it's more of a Teams chat nowadays, and say, oh, wow, that panel wasn't very diverse at all. And I don't know that people would have said that a year ago. And I think between like BLM and all the stuff that's going on and the pandemic, I feel like we've accelerated progress. I don't know, a decade it feels like, and it feels so hopeful, especially raising two multiracial children in this world. It gives me a lot of hope, but there's also still so much to overcome, as women of color. And so I think there's still a lot of work to do. And I think it's really upon the people who have succeeded to look back. And I loved what Julie said, to pull people behind you. I think that that's so important. So even as a college student, you can still pull people behind you. It's important that little girls, that little boys that look like you see that you're succeeding,
Thank you. Do I have time for one last question?
You definitely do.
Oh, good. Because this is one I think what people might be interested to know. And we'll start with Dean Foley on this one. How have you found mentors in your life? It's not on the script, so I'm sorry if I'm throwing you a loop here.
Oh, there we go. So basically, I have found mentors, and I've had a lot of mentors throughout my life. And I found mentors by actually observing and seeing the individuals who I respected, and then just working with them. So for instance, when I actually first started at Seton Hall, there was a faculty member who was, and I'm a pediatric nurse, so there was a faculty member who was teaching undergraduate pediatrics. She's no longer, she's retired, but, and so I watched her. And at the time, I was mainly teaching clinical. So I took my students out into the clinical agencies and I wasn't teaching I was teaching one course in the classroom. But so I went and my schedule allowed me to do this. She taught every Wednesday morning from 9 to 12, the undergraduate pediatric course. So I went to every one of her lectures for a year and I observed the way she taught. And, today there's a lot of discussion about the flipped classroom and things like that. back in, the early 90s, she was already doing that. Now, that being said, she demanded a lot of her students, and sometimes I thought she was a bit of a tyrant. And so, and depending on the students in the classroom, they couldn't learn in that environment. So if they were my students in clinical, I tutored them, they did fine. But so you learn from the good and the bad. But because of that, she taught me so much more than I learned in the classroom. And so, I think, and in the College of Nursing now, as the dean, I started whenever we have a new hire, we assign a mentor. And we try to do it in the, field that they work in. But I tell our new faculty, this is great because they'll help you with your coursework and things like that. But you need to find someone, there needs to be a match in the personality. Obviously, it needs to be someone that you really aspire to and would like to emulate. And so I think, basically you have to look for someone who you respect and who you would like to emulate. And then most people, again, are very happy to mentor you and like to help out. So so definitely reach out to those who you think you would like to be like.
Great. Jamie, I'm going to throw this one back at you.
I think finding a mentor is not as I don't know. I feel like if I was explaining this to my son, he would want like a step-by-step direction. It's not like a recipe you follow and then this person tells you everything you have to do and then you do it and you're successful. I think mentors come in different places. Even colleagues or peers can be mentors. I think I liked what Dean Foley said about finding things about people that you admire and figuring out what it is that you admire and trying to kind of replicate those things, whether it's the way they run a meeting or, how they carry themselves in public speaking. There's just so many ways that you can learn from so many different people that it doesn't have to be necessarily, a super formal mentor relationship. But I think that being said, I've also benefited from being part of formal mentor relationships where it is more sort of scripted and you kind of have predetermined times that you're meeting and things like that. So I think take advantage of everything, whether it's a more formal mentor relationship, but also finding women that you admire. I've had the pleasure of working for several really amazing women that I've admired. And I think they haven't just been my manager or supervisor, but I also consider them mentors. And even to this day, when I have big career decisions, I'll reach out to them for advice. So I think it doesn't have to be something very prescriptive or, where there's like a formula. I think you can just be open to learning from all sorts of people,
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Dr. Yu.
I'm just taking myself off mute. Right, it's a typical Zoom thing, right? Yeah, I have to echo what everyone said. Finding a mentor is it's not an easy, straightforward thing because to me it is all about fit, and it's a relationship and a journey. It isn't a you tell me what I need to do and checklist that for sure, and that's not the job of a manager either. I remember the first mentor I got the nerve to ask her if she could be my mentor. I had some peripheral interaction with her, and it was at Merck. I drove out to White House Station and kind of asked her. She couldn't do it, but she passed me on to somebody else, and it was great. I was scared to death. I don't know why, but I was scared to death. But she passed me on to somebody else, and it was really, really wonderful. But I have to say, the most fruitful mentor, and he's been my mentor for like 12 years now, and he's actually still my boss. He's the president and COO at Amicus. He's a young man. He's probably about 5-6 years younger than I am. Enrique knows him very well because he was Enrique's boss. But he has that special something where maybe it's because he has a very strong wife. His wife went to Harvard Business School like him. She's very strong. So I think he recognizes what strong women look like, what they maybe need in terms of the discussions. And it's not just, do this, do that. It's an ongoing dialogue and conversation with him that has been hugely helpful for me. he has to be honest with me. I have to be, thick-skinned enough to take it when he tells me something, and I have to take it on board and say, that's really interesting. Well, what do you think I could do differently next time, right? ... It's all about, growth. And again, it's uncomfortable. It's these uncomfortable, honest discussions where I love it and hate it at the same time. But I overall in the 12 years, I have loved it. When I didn't feel comfortable with what I was doing or who I was, or I doubted myself, I would check in with him and he would say, no, that's absolutely right. It's not comfortable. That's what leadership sometimes is about. Doing things that you don't feel great or comfortable about doing. That's what leadership is. If it was easy, everybody would be a leader, right? So I have to say that most meaningful mentor relationship I've had has come surprisingly from this younger man. I never thought. I mean, he comes from a very wealthy family. He's younger than me. He's male. He's white. Who would have thought he would be my strongest advocate? But he's also helped me to realize, how do white, wealthy, middle America, what do they think? Like, that is a lot of what the leadership at Amicus used to look like. Not so much anymore. We're chipping away at that. But helping me to have that insider view of, how do you guys think? Because I certainly don't relate to it. I have no idea what it's like to be able to, have all these lessons and classes and so forth. But like the rest of you, I had to work, take care of my younger brothers and sisters and do stuff for my parents because they were, busy working multiple jobs. But I have to say, sometimes you'll find these mentors in the oddest places, but somebody who believes in you and is willing to spend some time, glom onto them. I'm sure they would be happy to pay it forward. And if they're not the one for you, clearly, right?
Great. Okay. Let's go to Heather, and then Abby will close things out for us, okay?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to pile on too much. I do just recommend that if it's not a fit, don't try to make it work. Even if the other person's kind enough to continue to try to have mentoring, you'll know within 2 sessions whether or not it's going to be helpful for you or not. But I think that's the hardest thing in the world, is not like hurting someone's feelings because it's not working for you. If you're not getting a lot out of it, there's no point in doing it. And then everything everyone else said is exactly the right way to do it.
Great. Thank you. So Abby, have you had success in finding mentors in your academic career?
Yes, actually. So one thing that a lot of STEM, at least a lot of biochemistry people, that in my year, one thing we've always been trying to do is to find a place to do on-campus research, right? And it's very daunting, asking a professor sometimes, can I join your lab, especially as a junior, as a sophomore or freshman, because almost nothing about whatever field you're going into, right? So I wanted to do biochemistry research at the beginning, but I was very timid, and I found it easiest for me just to ask my professor, who at the time was Dr. Badillo. I was in his organic chemistry class, just to get my foot in the door. Sometimes you just need to get your foot in the door just to open yourself up to a mentorship that can give you an experience in close to the field you want to do, right? And at the time, I didn't realize how important organic chemistry is to biochemistry. And so I would encourage everyone just to be open to the different fields for mentorship. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same thing you're expecting it, but you can get a special experience that can really help you. Like Dr. Badillo pushes me in ways I wouldn't do because I am very shy. I don't like writing a lot. So I'm currently a Claire Booth Scholar, ICF&J fellow, and I have a fellowship that I'm going to do this summer. I would have not gone around to actually applying for these if it wasn't for Dr. Badillo pushing me last year to apply for the Claire Booth Scholarship and for the ICF&J fellowship. So I would encourage people, if you're having a hard time finding something in your field, like the direct thing you want to do, look outside, a little outside that area, and you might learn and get a mentor in something that can really benefit you.
Great. Thank you so much. Good advice. Well, I think you wanted to do some questions, so maybe I should stop at this point and we should see if we have any audience questions or any questions in the chat for the panel.
Yeah, I think all of you did such an amazing job in just sharing your stories and sharing your experiences. We're really grateful, to have incredible leaders like yourselves be part of this panel. And again, thank you so much for your time. We do have a couple questions that I can highlight. We're not going to be, unfortunately, able to highlight all of them because we want to be respectful of everyone's time. But if you have access to the chat box, I very much encourage you to scroll through and read all the student stories, because as you, the panelists, have been talking, we've been asking the audience members to also share some of their own experiences, and a lot of them were able to give you shout outs. So hold on, I have two questions that I can highlight here. If anyone wants to come off mute, if you can just raise your hand, we'll be happy to take on any oral questions that you'd like. But in terms of questions that we were able to pull, we have one for you, Heather. So the question says, "Thank you so much for sharing your stories. You each are so inspiring." To Heather, "Your background is so diverse, and I'm curious to know, how do you continue to continue?" I'm so sorry, I can't talk right now. "How do you continue to keep pushing yourself and learning the latest trends in your field?"
Oh, I think part of it is my personality. It's the perfect field for people whose brains get bored easily, because you have to always be training. The technologies are changing. It used to be every 3 years, and now it's every year. And the technology companies and the startups are all trying to bring to the marketplace things that simplify. But with that comes hiding a lot of what goes on behind the scenes with code. And I think what I'm most afraid of is that we're going to generalize this field to the point where kids are going to come out of school and they're not going to understand the essence behind talking to a piece of hardware, having the software speaking to it, because it's all going to be hidden by companies who have written things to make it easy and simplified. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that it is complex and it is like solving a puzzle every day. So I think if for this field, if there's anyone out there who's interested in it, it's the most, I feel extremely blessed that I got convinced to move this direction from where I started in mechanical engineering, because it has never, ever been a day where I've been bored. It's extremely enticing that way if you're always interested in learning without having to go to college again.
I can imagine how quickly technology is changing, and kudos to you and all of you for continuing on the cutting edge of science and technology, because that is a forever learning process. Dr. Yu, we have a question for you. And the question says, "Sometimes when I'm at work, I feel like I don't belong there. And I'm my biggest doubter." And to Dr. Yu, how did you spark that change in your mindset? You mentioned that is one of your pivotal moments, and it has been extremely hard for me to get there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's probably why it took me to my 40s to actually get there. How does one get there? I think the fact that you're actually asking that question is a huge step in the right direction right there. I had nobody. I didn't have that luxury of somebody actually telling me, maybe it's you, maybe you're standing in your own way. So kudos to you for already questioning yourself. I feel like you're already halfway there. Really, for me, it comes from what do you know? What do you know that you're great at, right? It's almost like doing your own SWOT analysis, right? Those of you who've gone to business school, I think she's off the camera now, right? You're doing your own SWOT analysis and trying to identify, what am I great at, right? And I know people always say, well, you should also look at your weaknesses and work on those. And to that I say, yeah, it's nice to know what your weaknesses are, but if you're awesome at something, that's where you should be focusing your time and your effort, because that is where you're going to really differentiate yourself. Why would you waste your time on working on something that you're not so great at, right? So here's my example. Like for my MBA, I focused on strategy, change management, and leadership, because those softer things I completely rocked at. Accounting and finance, B's all the way. I completely suck at it. Why would I waste my time trying to get better at doing NPV calculations on paper? It's a waste of my time. I would say once you actually focus on what are you great at and not so much what I don't know and what I'm not so good at, that's going to help you with your mind shift already, because then you can identify where could I add value if you're working in a company or if you're a student and trying to figure out what to do next with your career, your journey. For me, and I think maybe for you that might help as well, take stock. And again, I keep coming back to this, have that honest, ugly conversation with yourself and say, I'm not going to like what I think people I'm supposed to like, right? What my parents think I should like. For my parents, it was all about, are you going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or, whatever, to make money. Science, they had no idea what I was going to, they still don't know what I do. They have no clue. I'm 53 now. They still don't have a clue what I do. They just brag to their friends, yeah, she's some chief something and she makes a lot of money. And that's great for, an immigrant family. So I would say start with that ugly conversation, right? That's uncomfortable. Focus on what are the things that you're great at. Yes, maybe have a column of the things that you're not so great at. Then say, I'm not going to focus on those. I'm not going to go to school for those. I'm not going to even say I love those. And that's when you're going to really start that transformative mindset for you. Then you kind of know where you need to be going to school, right? The kind of people you need to be looking for, what support groups, what training, the kind of mentor that you're looking for. I would say it starts with that. It's ugly. It takes a level of maturity and strength and a thick skin, which again is why it took me until my early 40s to get there. Because until then, I thought I knew everything, and what my mother told me, what does she know? It's my mother, right? So I would say start there and look for people who are willing to have that awkward conversation with you and who are willing to tell you what you're great at and what you're not, because that's when you're really going to shift that mindset and say, I kick ass at this one thing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue that. I kick ass at it. I love it. And I know I can add value at a company, and it will show that authentic excitement, right? And your capabilities, it will show and you will shine.
That is such great advice. Thank you so much to Dr. Yu. For everyone on the call, let's not forget that we shared everyone's bios and included everyone's LinkedIn profiles. If there is someone who you really resonated with tonight, we very much encourage you to reach out and ask for a virtual coffee conversation, ask for any kind of advice that you may not have gotten here tonight. But again, to all the panelists, thank you so much for, giving us your time and giving us your expertise. I wish we could answer all the questions, but if there are specific questions that were aimed at you, and there are a few more, we'll make sure to send them to you via email so that you can answer them or connect with the corresponding student. But you are all such incredible leaders, and thank you so much, Dr. Mazbardi, for moderating this panel tonight. And again, for your expertise, for your experience, thank you so much. And we wish everyone a safe and healthy night. And I'm sure I speak for everybody, but we want to be like all of you when we grow up. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.